You think you're above the law? Get on the ground. Those were the words that shattered the calm of a quiet Thursday morning outside a roadside diner off Route 7. They weren't coming from a movie, a TV show, or even a training exercise. No, these words were being screamed by Officer Dale, a small-town cop with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove. The man he was barking at? Just a guy in a hoodie, jeans, and dark sunglasses. Looked like your average traveler passing through. But appearances, as always, can be deceiving. That average guy was none other than Special Agent Michael Ryder, a veteran FBI operative working undercover on a sensitive, high-level investigation. His mission? To quietly uncover a corruption ring that, ironically, may have included local law enforcement. At that moment, Agent Ryder had just stepped out of the diner, where he'd met with a confidential informant. They had breakfast, coffee, talked in hushed tones. He paid in cash. Nothing flashy. He looked ordinary, and that was exactly the point. Staying under the radar was part of the job. But the two officers parked across the street had no idea who they were watching. Officer Dale, known for his aggressive tactics and inflated sense of authority, had been keeping tabs on Ryder for a few days. Word around the department was that someone sketchy had been lurking around town, always alone, talking to strange people, and never staying in one place too long. Dale, fueled more by his gut and ego than facts, became convinced this mystery man was up to no good. Drugs? Guns? Who knows? But he was determined to catch him. Alongside Dale was Officer Kent, a fresh-faced rookie barely 6 months out of the academy. He looked up to Dale, admired his confidence, and followed his lead without question. That morning, they watched as Ryder sat alone in the diner, his demeanor calm but unreadable. Dale narrowed his eyes. "Something's off about this guy," he muttered. "I say we move." "But he hasn't done anything," Kent replied, hesitant. "Trust me, kid. That's how they work. Real criminals don't wave red flags. We're doing the town a favor." So when Ryder stepped out, zipping up his hoodie and heading toward his car, Dale saw his moment. He flicked on the cruiser lights, slammed the door, and stormed toward him with purpose. "Stop right there," he bellowed. Ryder turned, slightly confused but calm. "Is there a problem, officer?" Dale didn't answer. He was already pulling out his cuffs. "I said get on the ground." Ryder's eyebrows raised slightly. "You really don't want to do this." "Wrong answer." Dale took it as defiance, grabbing Ryder's arm and twisting it behind his back. Before the agent could say another word, he was slammed against the hood of the police car, cuffs clamped tightly around his wrists. Officer Kent watched nervously, still unsure but not bold enough to stop it. Inside the diner, a few customers pressed up against the windows. One woman pulled out her phone and began filming. Another man whispered, "That didn't look right." As Dale frisked Ryder, the agent said again, this time with more weight, "You have no idea what you're doing." "Yeah." Dale sneered. "I know exactly what I'm doing. Cleaning trash off the streets." At that moment, the arrogance was blinding. Officer Dale believed he'd just made a career-defining arrest. He had no clue he'd just tackled an undercover federal agent in the middle of an ongoing investigation, one that might have included Dale's own department. And now, the entire mission was compromised. But Agent Ryder? He didn't resist. He didn't fight back. Because he knew something Dale didn't. The clock had just started ticking, and consequences were coming. Officer Dale's boots hit the pavement hard as he slammed his cruiser door and stormed toward the man standing beside a black Dodge Charger. He didn't hesitate. No formalities. No reasonable approach. "ID, now," he barked, pointing a finger aggressively at the man in the hoodie and sunglasses. That man, of course, was Special Agent Michael Ryder, still undercover and still trying to keep a low profile. Agent Ryder didn't flinch. His voice was cool, collected. "Is there a problem, officers?" Officer Kent, tagging along just a step behind Dale, puffed up his chest like he'd seen cops do in the movies. "Don't play games with us. We've been watching you. We know you're up to something." There is no legal reason to stop Ryder. No warrant, no probable cause, not even a traffic violation. Just a hunch and two overly confident officers with something to prove. And Ryder knew it. He slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out a black leather wallet. The sunlight caught the edges, and for a second, it looked like he was going to flash something important. But instead of flipping it open, Ryder locked eyes with Dale. "You don't want to do this," he said calmly. "Trust me." Those 5 words? Big mistake in Dale's mind. He wasn't used to anyone talking back, let alone someone calm, unreadable, and clearly unfazed by his authority. Dale's ego couldn't take it. To him, Ryder wasn't cooperating. He was challenging him, and that was all the justification Dale needed. Without another word, Dale stepped forward, grabbed Ryder's arm, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him face first against the hood of the cruiser. "Put your hands where I can see them." Ryder didn't resist. He knew better. But as the cuffs clicked shut around his wrists, he repeated his warning, even more firmly this time. "You have no right to detain me." Customers inside the diner gasped. A few of them rushed to the window. One teenager outside had already pulled out their phone and was recording. It wasn't every day that something like this happened in a sleepy town, and certainly not to someone who looked so calm and in control. But Dale, he was still on his power trip. "We're the law here," he snapped. "Let's see what your story is down at the station." Kent glanced over at Ryder, then to Dale. "Shouldn't we, call this in or something?" Dale waved him off. "I've got a feeling about this guy. Probably a runner. Or a trafficker. We'll sort it out." But inside Ryder's mind, he was already calculating. They had no clue who he really was. No idea that they just laid hands on a federal agent actively working a confidential operation. No idea that Ryder wasn't just here on vacation or passing through. He was embedded in this town, assigned to expose exactly the kind of abuse of power they were now displaying in real time. And worst of all, they had just physically assaulted a federal agent, an automatic felony. That's not a slap on the wrist. That's the kind of mistake that ends careers, sparks investigations, and brings the full weight of the federal government crashing down. Ryder didn't resist. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He didn't have to, because everything was being recorded both by bystanders and by his hidden body, Mike feeding real-time audio to his FBI team monitoring from a nearby van. He let Dale have his moment, because Agent Ryder knew the moment of reckoning was coming, and it was coming fast. Back at the station, Officer Dale was feeling pretty pleased with himself. He leaned back in his chair with a smug grin, tossing Ryder's wallet onto the table. "Let's see who you really are," he muttered, flipping it open without a second thought. Nothing inside looked fake. No drugs, no weapons, not even a traffic ticket. Just a few business cards, some folded cash, and a laminated ID that didn't say much. Dale furrowed his brow. No license, no state ID, nothing. In the holding room, Agent Michael Ryder sat silently, his expression unreadable. His hands were still cuffed behind his back, but his posture was completely relaxed, as if he was the one in control. Officer Kent watched from outside the room, arms crossed. His earlier confidence had started to fade. Something about the way Ryder spoke, the calmness, the warning, "You don't want to do this," it didn't sit right with him. "Shouldn't we call a supervisor or something?" Kent finally asked. Dale rolled his eyes. "Relax. Guy's probably some con artist. You see how confident these scammers act when you catch him? Trust me, I've done this longer than you've been out of high school." But Dale was dead wrong. Ryder glanced up as Dale opened the door to the holding room. "You've got one phone call," Dale snapped, tossing an old landline handset on the table. Agent Ryder gave the faintest smile. "One is all I need." He leaned over, dialed the number from memory, and said just 6 words. Code red. 324, extraction. Now, that was it. He hung up. Dale laughed. "What was that? Some kind of gang code?" Ryder looked him straight in the eye. "You'll find out." 20 minutes passed. Nothing happened at first. Then, the sound of tires screeching echoed outside. 3 black SUVs pulled into the police station parking lot in perfect formation. Their windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. The moment they stopped, the doors flew open, and out stepped men and women in full tactical gear. Suits, badges, earpieces, and expressions that meant business. Inside the station, officers stood up from their desks, confused. One dispatcher reached for the intercom, unsure if this was a drill or a raid. The door burst open. A tall man with a federal badge walked in, flanked by 2 agents. "Where is Special Agent Michael Ryder?" he asked, voice like steel. The entire room froze. Kent blinked. "Wait, Special Agent." Dale's jaw dropped. "Agent what?" The lead FBI agent didn't wait for permission. He stormed through the hallway, opened the holding room, and immediately uncuffed Ryder. "Sir, are you injured?" Ryder stood, brushed the dust off his hoodie, and said calmly, "No, but I'll need your full report on the local interference." These 2 just tanked 5 months of undercover work. Outside the holding room, Kent looked like he'd seen a ghost. Dale was completely speechless, his face pale, his mouth slightly open. This has to be a mistake," Dale stammered. "He never said he was FBI." The lead agent turned slowly. He couldn't. He was undercover. And now, thanks to your little cowboy stunt, half our suspects are spooked. Dale tried to recover. "We had reason to believe he was suspicious." Suspicious. Ryder cut in. "You followed me, tackled me without cause, and arrested me based on a gut feeling. That's not suspicion. That's incompetence." A heavy silence filled the room. Then, the lead agent gave a single nod to one of his team members. "Document everything. We're launching an internal inquiry. Effective immediately." Dale stood frozen in place, realizing for the first time that this wasn't going to get swept under the rug. This was real, and it had just begun. The police station that once felt like Officer Dale's kingdom had suddenly become a courtroom, and he was now the one on trial. As FBI agents swarmed the building, collecting evidence, reviewing footage, and questioning staff, Dale's confidence collapsed like a house of cards. Every badge he flashed, every command he barked, now meant nothing. He wasn't in charge anymore. The feds were. And the worst part? It was all on camera. One of the FBI tech agents retrieved dashcam and bodycam footage from Dale's patrol car. Another pulled the diner surveillance. What they found was crystal clear. Dale and Kent stopping a man with no legal justification, ignoring verbal warnings, and physically restraining someone who was not resisting, all while that man repeatedly told them they were making a mistake. But the footage didn't just show a mistake. It showed a mindset: arrogance, profiling, and abuse of authority. Agent Ryder sat calmly at a desk in the back office, watching the chaos unfold. He wasn't angry. He didn't need to be. The system was doing exactly what it was designed to do when the right people were watching. Outside, reporters were already arriving. Word had leaked that a federal agent had been unlawfully arrested during an undercover operation. Social media clips from diner customers had gone viral within an hour. Titles like "Small-Town Cop Tackles Undercover FBI Agent" were trending. Dale tried to save face. He walked up to the lead FBI agent and muttered, "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot." The agent didn't even let him finish. "You're done talking," he said coldly. "Anything else you say will go in the report. You're now under investigation for obstruction of justice, unlawful detention, and interference with a federal operation." Dale stammered. "I didn't know he was FBI." "You didn't ask," Agent Ryder said, stepping forward. "You acted on ego, not evidence. And you just compromised a 6-month investigation into police corruption, the very thing you've now become the face of." Kent sat quietly in the corner, guilt written all over his face. He wasn't innocent, but he wasn't malicious either. He was just following Dale's lead, and now he was realizing how wrong that lead had been. Later that afternoon, both Dale and Kent were escorted to separate interrogation rooms for formal statements. Kent, scared and shaken, came clean. "I didn't know he was FBI. Dale told me the guy looked suspicious. I thought he had more information than me." His honesty earned him leniency, but not immunity. Dale, on the other hand, refused to back down. "You think I'm the only one who would have made that call?" He was acting shady, dressed weird, talking to lowlifes. Agent Ryder raised an eyebrow. "You mean he didn't look like you expected a law-abiding person to look? That's called profiling, and it's why you're under investigation." By sunset, both officers were placed on administrative leave without pay. Their badges were taken. Their weapons were logged into evidence. And the once cocky Dale? He sat in an empty locker room, staring at his hands, no longer sure what came next. The town, once so proud of their tough cop, began asking questions. Local media started digging into Dale's past complaints, many of which had been buried or ignored. Now, they were being reopened. And as for Ryder, he didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He simply picked up his jacket, nodded to his team, and walked out of the station. There was still work to do. The operation would continue, this time with the full truth out in the open. Because in the end, justice doesn't always come with flashing lights and loud sirens. Sometimes it walks quietly into a diner, sips its coffee, and waits for the right moment to strike. And when it does, no one is above the law. The fallout from the incident was swift, loud, and far-reaching. Within 48 hours of the illegal arrest, the FBI filed a formal complaint with the state attorney general's office. News of what had happened in that quiet little town made national headlines. Small-town cops arrest undercover FBI agent. Internal corruption probe unleashed. Dale and Kent went from being officers of the law to symbols of how quickly power, when unchecked, can turn dangerous. An internal affairs investigation was launched immediately. Dale, suspended without pay, faced mounting charges, unlawful arrest, excessive use of force, interference in a federal investigation, and abuse of authority. Each one carried real consequences, not just job loss, but potential jail time. Kent, meanwhile, cooperated fully. He admitted he hadn't understood the situation and had only followed Dale's lead out of loyalty and inexperience. Because of his cooperation, his punishment was reduced. He received a 6-month unpaid suspension and was placed on strict probation, with mandatory retraining and community oversight if he ever returned to duty. But the story didn't stop there. As investigators dug deeper into Dale's career, they found a pattern. Multiple complaints from citizens, most of them dismissed or never formally reviewed. Minorities in the community had long whispered about his aggressive tactics. A few had video evidence, but were too afraid to come forward. Until now. Suddenly, dozens of people were speaking up. A class action lawsuit was filed. The town's mayor, under pressure from the public and the media, released a statement calling the arrest deeply disturbing and promised full cooperation with federal oversight. The police chief, caught between loyalty to his department and the undeniable facts, was forced to resign. And at the center of it all was Agent Michael Ryder. He didn't want fame. He didn't want credit. He simply wanted justice to run its course, and for the truth to be exposed. He continued working with his task force, this time with full transparency and support from higher authorities. No more hiding, no more pretending. His cover was blown, but his mission had only just begun. Over the next few months, the investigation led to more arrests. Officers, clerks, even city officials, caught in a web of corruption, cover-ups, and abuse of power. Ryder's original operation had aimed to uncover misuse of funds and illegal searches. Ironically, Dale's ego-driven arrest ended up speeding up the whole case. In a strange twist of fate, by trying to act like a hero, Dale had exposed the entire system. At a public town hall months later, one elderly man stood up and said, "We always suspected something was off, but no one would believe us until that FBI agent showed up." It was a rare moment of collective healing, where an entire town finally started to reckon with its own broken system. And what about Dale? He was eventually convicted of official misconduct and obstruction. While he didn't serve a long sentence, his career in law enforcement was over. His name would forever be tied to the moment he put handcuffs on the wrong man, and the truth that came crashing down because of it. Kent, having learned a painful but valuable lesson, chose not to return to law enforcement. Instead, he went back to school to study criminal justice from the other side, this time with a real understanding of how fragile trust in law enforcement truly is. And Agent Ryder? He moved on to his next assignment, quiet, focused, and professional as ever. When asked by a reporter if he had any final words about the incident, he simply said, "Justice doesn't always roar in. Sometimes it walks in quietly and walks out with the truth."